meeting to order 7:31 p.m. This meeting is a special committee meeting to address the allegations against board member John Cho as a committee before the recommendation to the full board from the committee. Okay, Chuck has prepared allegations against John Cho. I'll let Chuck present. I would prefer you not report.
I appreciate that. I would prefer to report.
Just identify yourself.
My name is Zeke Luger.
Are you from an organization?
No, I'm a student at Queens College.
Okay. Just spell your name, please.
It's Z-E-K-E.
Z-E-K-E.
And then L-U-G-E-R.
L-U-G-E-R. The steakhouse.
Exactly. There we go. Thanks. Thank you.
Chuck, we'll let you.
Thanks.
We'll let you start. It was our intention to handle one item at a time.
Okay. I just have an opening, if you don't mind, just to kind of set the table on certain things.
Are you going to submit that, or just
the opening? No, but everything else I'll submit to. I just wanted to let everybody know that, as you probably aware, on May 26th, this letter was sent to John Cho, which was the notice of take notice that the allegations were being filed, and as per the bylaws, that notice had been sent, and was sent by certified mail and by email, which he acknowledged receipt, which took us to the first step of this process. As you remember, three-step process one, which was on June 14th, was the full board met to hear the charges and determine whether or not step 2 and step 3 should take place, which would be the special committee hearing today, and then ultimately a final vote before the full board. And on June 14th, the board overwhelmingly voted, as you'll remember, 43 to 3 to 1, to proceed with the community investigation. I just want to remind everybody that the committee tonight and ultimately the full board is charged with one requirement. The one requirement is cause. There needs to be cause for removal. Cause is defined as a reason for an action. And that reason isn't defined any further. So what I say to you is, you need to find, in all the discussions that we have tonight, is whether or not there are basis or grounds for removal. Nothing more. The 5 allegations that are being presented tonight are not required to be unanimously approved. And each charge does not have to be individually or unanimously approved. The meeting is here to determine whether or not there's a basis. And if that basis is something you determine in your mind and your heart, which is the charge for removal, then cause is satisfied, and that should be sufficient. Before I submit, I just want to let you know that this was not something that took place overnight. Cho's actions and misdeeds, he grew and continued to grow to this day. He still will not let up, and I'll show you in a little while, of the arrogance and defiance he has with board structure and authority, and with malice. The malice he has to harm our reputation as board members for whatever his personal agenda may or may not be. Hours and hours and hours and hours of work were unnecessarily performed by our executive committee, our fellow board members, our B7 staff, and other government agencies were brought in also to combat the horrific misdeeds made by Cho. I personally spent dozens of hours speaking with our fellow board members, had numerous meetings with our executive committee, and with the New York City Law Department before we made formal charges. Thus is the reason we had unanimous approval to proceed with the charges by our executive committee, and 93% approval to proceed by our full board. Please remember, Cho is not a child. This is a 54-year-old man, former chief of staff, then Councilman John Liu, And then policy director, the then controller, John Lee. John Cho knows public policy and decorum better than anybody. You want me to read the charges into the record, or just go one at a time?
I would go one at a time,
Okay.
because the charges, we have them on file already, and they're on the.
Okay. So, the first charge
And
is.
Mr. Cho violated the New York City Charter, section 2604, B, 9, 11, and 12, with respect to soliciting funds from Community Board 7 Queens members for his 2021 campaign to New York City Council member for District 20.
You got an extra?
No.
Okay.
Thank you. I think some of the people here actually received the emails. This is something that I solicited, or anybody else solicited. It came to our attention that, if I'm correct, there were a total of 15 folks that received this email. And the email was written under the premise of have a great holiday, it's the end of the season, hope you're doing well, and by the way, why would you contribute to my campaign? The charter is clear. We are not allowed to ask other board members and people in our organization for campaign contributions. It's a policy violation, it's a charter violation. Chapter 68 is clear that without limitations, you may not solicit support for a campaign for those with whom you deal with at your community board. That you perform service for the campaign only at times you're required not to perform services for the city, and that you not use city equipment, letterhead, or other city resources in connection with this outside activity. The city resource in this case was our email list. Now, one can say that that list was commingled with other lists. I don't buy that. He tried saying that at one point, but the fact of the matter is, his campaign, they're responsible. And when you violate the law, if you do something illegal, it's your responsibility to go through the paperwork, go through your list, and know what you're saying and who you solicit. He emailed CB7 members requesting contributions to his campaign, and he used our resource, which is the email list. In fact, he was told numerous times prior, because there were aggravations made by other board members unsoliciting campaigns, but over the years, that he was sending emails of his personal time to them on their emails, which he was told numerous times by the chair. In fact, we had a special meeting going over that our email is private. It should only be used for business with its community board and not for other business. And in fact, one board member was a city employee, and they were using his email, our email at work, city resource, which became upsetting and embarrassing for us. It's our understanding community board member cannot communicate on behalf of the political campaign with other members of the community board or staff. There's an advisory to that, you'll read it. The staff of the community board can make a political contribution or to engage in political activity. There's charter sections with that. Furthermore, New York City's charter prohibits any public servant from asking any other public servant to engage in political activities or make political contributions, as I said before. It was so upsetting and so violating that the top sheet that you have in the list over here was written to the Conflict of Interest Board by our chair at the end of December last year. On the second page of the data, you'll see a list of people who received it or who didn't. And you can see that a substantial number of people did receive it. And on the side, right now, I look on the second page, 23 people, nearly half the board, received this. The third page is just receipt of a complaint. Someone asked me, and first they'll do is they'll receive it, and then you'll see the emails themselves. And one was sent to Clarissa Wong. Another one was sent to Barbara McHugh. Of the 2024 that was sent. This is a clear violation of the law. I'm open to questions.
This one kind of stands on its own. There are people at this table, and including myself, who received this, and nobody received it. But that's a matter of fact at this point. To have that argued, Mr. Cho would have had the opportunity to explain it, argue it, defend it. He received the opportunity to be here, and he is not. So, as chair, I'm going to mark this as fact submitted. Chair, we remember anybody want to discuss it at that time?
Actually, you have on this, that I didn't receive the solicitation, I actually did receive this.
You did?
email from him.
Oh, okay.
So that, more than the correction.
Thanks.
That's it? All right. Okay, so that's, fact submitted, accepted as fact.
Okay.
Wade did receive the solicitation. So, item number 2. Item number 2.
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought you were going to announce it. I'm sorry.
I
This is the Facebook charge?
Cho representatives on his behalf have created a fake, Green Ward 7 student Facebook page. Blah, 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 blah. And the reason I said blah, 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 and didn't go over much more further, is that I heard him admit to the fact that he did do this.
Yes. And I think that's one of my opening statements, is that at the hearing at June 14th, when he was so belligerent to the chair, and he kept telling the chair to keep his mouth shut, and he was just being very argumentative and nasty to the chair, he did finally blurt out, "I did set up the page. You weren't acting quickly enough for social media, and I kept asking you to do so. You weren't working quick enough, so I did it on my own." So that's kind of like the closing scene in the movie. So let's go back in time and we'll go through all the history of why this became such an ongoing issue and how much time and resource we had to put into this. The first letter you're seeing is a letter written to the law department, which then went to DOI for investigation. A Facebook page was created, and I don't know how it came to our attention, but someone said there's a Facebook page for Community Board 7. And people were asking around, did you do it, did you authorize it, who was involved? No one knew. So we did an email survey to every single board member, and in writing, 49 board members wrote back that they had no knowledge of the page, no knowledge of who created it, except for one person, John Cho. John Cho was then confronted.
You know what, at the time frame on that?
The email? I don't.
Am I going to guess around February 2020? When this letter?
No, let's before that. I'll make if you'll permit, I can actually make a clarifying comment there.
You want to do that?
Yeah, so I can't be certain, but I was one of the people who I think found out that this page existed and brought to the attention of the board, because at the time I was going in and starting to do some research on what was required to actually go through proper channels to set up social media channels for any city agency, including the board. And in the process of doing that, that's when I actually discovered that there already was a page, and brought people's attention from This would have been, it definitely preceded February 2020. It would have been potentially as early as 2019.
Yeah, that's what I figured.
Late 19, early 20, around that time
Yeah,
frame.
because we got Arlene's letter,
Well, Arlene is a collaborating letter from 2018, which I'll get into in a minute, but that was not complete to this.
I'm gonna put just 20, approximately 20.
There are some posts of September, here's a post of 2019, September. I would guess it was probably Q4 of 2019 when it kind of came to light. And then, you know, took a little while to come. Thank you.
You just give it a really quickly, Mr. Chuck, we started 7:31, John Jones has not shown up yet.
Did you want to have a take it if you wanted to take?
But, sure.
A lot of people are doing it.
Yeah, I'm happy to share.
What?
Yeah, I'm happy to share the recording.
Always.
Please no.
Okay, but he doesn't belong to the board, so whatever he does for recording doesn't have to give it.
No.
Yeah.
I love
Yeah.
it, thank you very much, makes it
Yeah,
a
for
lot
sure.
easier for us, yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
I just didn't know if you wanted the recording, I wanted to take it.
Yeah. No, it's always good to have a couple recordings.
What's now, it's gonna make it wider, which I don't have to set. Add it to here. So, that thing is in, no, it's not, I don't have the plug, I thought I had the plug in the thing. So I can, I'm gonna have to use the guy anyhow.
Okay, yeah. Like I said, I am happy to share, or you could like, just like pull out your phone, or you could also pull out your phone. Like,
Barbara's taping, I'm taping.
yeah, yeah,
What happens is they have one at the homes, they have all the paper things, so the problem is how to get it out of the phone into the email.
So just to fill you in, being as chair, we opened up with the allegations, and we're taking, we decided we were going to take one by one, and they could be debated if John was here. We went through the first one, which was a hard fact that John Charles solicited funds. All right, we're on the second fact that he created, verifying the second item that created an alternate, an unauthorized
That's what it's doing.
Community Board 7 Facebook page. The fact of that is not very arguable because John admitted it himself on 6/14/2021 at the CB7 meeting. So, and that page was roughly established in the late part of 2019.
You know, the unfortunate part about this, and I think you got to understand the laborious grief that this caused for us. First of all, and we've had discussions with Blake with the test. Facebook doesn't let you take a page down unless you create a page. You're considered an administrator. And they won't reveal the administrator. So here we are stuck with someone bogusly representing us, bogusly creating what may appear to be our views. And we don't know who it is, and we can't do anything about it.
More importantly, we as a community board and part of the city have supplied life safety information to the community that the community relies on, as we just went through a year and a half of COVID and information at
Correct.
such point. So the dangers of having a fake page that can affect life safety issues, I take very, very seriously.
I agree. So we had no choice. So Gene wrote the letter to the law department, and DOI came in. So now it had to be a hearing. DOI came to the board. I was there with Marilyn and Gene. DOI came with an attorney and a representative to our conference, and back and forth the discussions. And obviously, leading up to this, all the work it took to get, did you do it? You know who did it? I mean, just a waste of time, waste of effort. And all, look, we looked at it and we said, look, it looks like John's show, but it's Flushing Fantastic, which is one of his groups. It's the Greater Flushing Chamber of Commerce, which is his group. And by the way, for a guy that kept saying, we got to get the word out, Look at the bottom. 3 likes. 4 likes. No one read it. No one cared. This overwhelming cry that we must get the information out. Even our chats. 13 chats. 13. I mean, you know, he was making it seem like we were withholding information. The community at large was suffering for it. And even with this bogus page, nobody was paying attention to it. All he had to do was when Gene and Marilyn came to him back in February of 2020, was admitted it, and a lot of this could have disappeared and could have been worked out. I'm sorry? No, which one is that?
It's on all of them.
Oh, my face is on.
Yours, yeah.
Oh, right, okay.
It's his
Well,
show.
that's me on face. I went to Facebook to find these,
Oh, okay.
and then I took
Oh,
screenshots.
all right.
Yeah, what you're looking at is screenshots
Oh,
because,
what you do.
you know, once the site was removed, the one, oh,
I
he,
sent some also to.
yes, you did. Yes, you did. So I was concerned that, it says here the page was created December 4th, 2017. So this page was created a long time ago. And I guess it only started to become active in 2019. And we know who created it. And it just created tons of grief for us, aggravation, extra work, all in defiance of authority, all in defiance of working within a community board structure, within a government structure. Remember, this man was chief of staff for a council member. This man ran policy for the controller's office. This man knew what he was doing and didn't care. The defiance and the arrogance is, I think, what is the overwhelming thread that knits all of these charges together and why it makes it so important that we're here tonight and that we continue the process for removal. I'll rest.
All right, board members, any questions for Chuck or any questions or any internal discussion on this one?
I'll make comments because, you know, the point that you brought up about the fact that this could have been rectified, I spoke to John Cho personally and I asked him, did you create this page? Because in the process of trying to set up something through what I understood to be the approved methodology of the city, we could have worked together to create or to, make the page whole, right?
What was his answer?
He said no. He denied that he had anything to do with the page. So, as somebody who works in the tech industry, is it frustrating how slow things move with the city, especially with respect to setting things up like social media within this community board? Yes, very much so. But from day one, when I was granted and trained as a board member, it was driven into me that as a public servant now, what you do and say on social media, or what you purport to do and say on behalf of your agency on social media is very much a matter of law. I was told, and I do actually write certain things about the proceedings of the board, on Medium as one example, but I was told that at very minimum by the Public Interest Board that I was required by law to provide a disclaimer. That said that none of the views that I expressed were in any way meant to represent the board, and then they're holding my own. It's frustrating that given the opportunity to rectify the situation that John chose not to. Because I think it could have been made better. It could have been fixed.
Yep.
I can clarify. Okay. When this was brought up to us and we were going to go to Department of Investigation, I had the board, all board members, to verify they had nothing to do with this. The only person that didn't respond was John Cho. I then, the night of our public meeting, I met with him in the back in Solarium, and I had the district manager sit with me just to verify that whatever he said, there would be another person present that would witness it. I asked John at the particular time, did you set the page up? And he wouldn't give me an answer. And then I explained to him, my next step is to go to the Department of Investigation and make an official complaint. I didn't want to hurt anybody, I just wanted the page taken down. And we His answer to me was, Gene, do what you have to do. That was the statement. He didn't deny it, he didn't acknowledge it, his answer was, do what you have to do. It was the only one of all the board members that refused to answer the question.
I don't know. I just opened up the question, but like we did the last one. Anyone who was at the meeting and on June 14th, we were all there, heard him say that he did the page, so we'll accept that as fact, and it's unarguable whether he's here or not, as is unarguable the first item, which is we accept it as fact. So now we can go to item number 2.
Before we do that, I just have a point of information for you, Frank. I don't know if you mentioned it, but I had the board send you an email about tonight about the contact. Did you mention it to the board?
About the
Contacting people. I had the board because I was concerned when we asked you, we were able to get a hold of John Cho. And I understand the board said that you weren't able to get a hold of him.
no, I was not.
Okay.
So a minimum of a half a dozen phone calls and
To protect everybody down the line, I had the board office again send an email to all the committee members as well as Chuck and John Cho. I then made sure that we had all the telephone numbers correct and that we had all the emails correct. And I then had Mary send it out again, and she sent you an email. It says, sorry, and it should be addressed to you, but I had a carbon copy. It says, Frank, Mary called the committee members to confirm their attendance to tonight's meeting. All except John Cho's response yes to attend the meeting. Mary called John Cho's cell number at 646-783-8985 at 11:10 a.m. and his office number is 646-820-5163 at 11:12 a.m. Mary also left messages with time and location of tonight's meeting. She asked that he please call the board office to confirm his attendance. The agenda was sent via email to everybody attending the meeting. John Cho's email was sent to jocho25@gmail.com, personal, and john@flushingchambers.nyc business at 7/9/21 at 3:45 p.m. and an email reminder sent 7/20/21 at 9:03 a.m. Frank, it's now 4:10. Sorry. Frank, it's now 4:10 p.m. and still no response to Mr. Cho. Just for your records. And we tried to do due diligence, make sure everybody knew about tonight's meeting.
that's a matter of office record.
That's why I haven't sent it to me.
So item number 3, poor attendance.
Right. John Cho, the allegation is John Cho had poor Community Board 7 meeting attendance and or poor voting record.
Okay, I just want to clarify something before we start. With regard to that. Yeah, over the course of the 20-some odd years I'm involved, there has been some people with poor attendance. Some people were not renewed, some people have left, and so forth and so on. So that there was, I don't want to actually say precedent because this characteristic of poor attendance is in a class of its own. By reason of the attendance at the meeting and then the absentee vote.
Poor voting record, including abstaining from votes without cause, and or leaving meeting early to avoid voting, which would then eliminate the reason to abstain by not being there for the vote, which is insufficient to meet his obligations as a member of the board to vote on all matters presented to the board for a vote, except where there is a conflict of interest. Now,
Just let me clarify this sheet here, the 9 out of 10, he attended or missed?
attended. Everything you see is attendance. Let's be clear. Harping on a little bit and following up a little what Frank was saying. This isn't the only charge. If this was the only charge, there'd be some discussion and there'd be some concern. But again, there's a thread. There's a thread that ties everything together. And when you've got someone that, from a committee meeting standpoint, you look at it, committees is less than 60%. So it means he's missing 4 out of 10 committee meetings. From an attendance standpoint, his blended committees and average from everything is 59% over a 3-year period. But folks, here's the issue. He left early, that doesn't show here. He abstained, that doesn't show here. And we asked him numerous times, do you have a conflict? And he would, I don't have to answer that. And then the chair would clarify, yes, you do, because it affects how the vote goes in, as either an abstention non-counting, or as an abstention and you have a conflict. And he wouldn't, and then finally he would say, no conflict. So at that point, under numerous times, and in fact you will remember, I frustratedly stood up one point and said, you can't keep doing this. You have a job to do. If you expect to represent the community, if you expect to be here and help out, you're supposed to give a voice. Now, I could suppose, and I'm sure you could suppose, why he abstained. You could also guess why he didn't stick around to vote, because I guess he didn't want certain things on his record. But at the end of the day, that's not our job. We have a tough job. We have to make decisions. And sometimes the decisions aren't easy ones, and they may not be popular ones. But he is there for a reason. He is there for a reason to vote. And again, for someone that shows up and misses 4 out of 10 meetings on total for a 3-year period, and the data does not include the numerous times he abstained, that's a problem. And again, defiant and arrogant in the reason and why of the methodology.
So just something I want to add to that. The leaving early, in addition to not being able to vote on certain items that come before the board, you're also not there for public participation.
Correct.
And that, so when we have members of the public who they stay with us sometimes 2.5 to 3 hours, and they want their voice to be heard, and their voice is as important as anyone else's. And to leave early, that's disrespectful to those members, to those members of the public who stay there. To me, that's even worse than actually not voting. It's showing that disrespect. You're taking away the voice from the public.
Is there any comments from the committee on this? So Chuck did present an attendance record of hard meetings. He did bring out a point that I'd like to bring out as well, that the actual voting record is even worse than the attendance, because there were votes that he was not there for, and there were votes that he abstained for no conflict of interest or reason, which is the lack of fulfilling his responsibility. And furthermore, leaving meetings early, even though we've been marked for attendance, is the lack of fulfilling the responsibility. So, when and if you want to compare attendance to other people, I think this stands in the category, say it again, stands on the category of its own. Committee members, anybody want to comment?
I would like to make a suggestion that if it is possible, as a matter of fact for the full board, I think it's important to be able to try to get at least some estimate of what percentage of votes are staying in the conflict or you're just not present for.
Got to put the board office to work.
Yep.
That's why they do it.
What you would need to do at that point would be to go through all of the votes and then cherry pick out from there. I don't think that that's going to be necessary. If, for lack of a better word, if there's a huge story while we're debating later, then that might be a move to make. But if there is not, then I think it would be moved that way.
That's my sentiment exactly. It would take a lot more time to dig into the data. I felt that, again, if this was the sole charge, then we go after it, but because this is one of of many, and I thought the data itself was poor enough, and then to prevent it with the fact that we know that he didn't vote.
Everybody was there, they would shake their head when.
Right, why is he not voting, why is he not voting? And then they called his name, oh, he left.
Yeah.
So I didn't think it had to be empirical, I think it was one of those things you just weigh in your hand and go, gotcha. But you tell me if you feel that we need to get the board off to dig into that.
Yeah, and I think. Thank you. Okay, let's move item number 4. Oh, I want to go back to a second. Item number 4, item number 3, I'm sorry, item number 3, for attendance. Are we going to accept that as fact? Betsy says yes. Barbara says yes. Warren says yes. Legs? Okay.
Just while we're waiting, as a point of information, I received an email just now in this meeting from John Show that is directed towards Donovan Richards in his office, which is basically his appeal to the board president's office directly on everything that's happening here. I don't want to get into it. I can forward it to the board office.
The only thing I ask is, are we expecting him here?
I don't think so.
You're right. Does it say he's coming? He's not here, does it say he's coming?
No.
No.
So the people, you wrote an email to Donovan, that's the thing.
Yes, it's been directed to Donovan Richards.
Okay.
If in there it said he's coming, or we should expect him, I'd like to know that, and I will give you the courtesy. Since there is lack of any sentiment that he is on his way of coming, and I expect that he's not here. Okay, item number 4, Josephine, CB7 members by repeatedly disparaging their reputations through oral written statements, etc.
By the way, just dovetailing with what Lay said, let's be clear. Donovan Richards does not have any voice in all respecting him on the removal process we are doing. Donovan cannot stop the process, and Donovan cannot say he must stay. This is a board mandated through our bylaws, and something that we can do. Donovan can do it on his own too, but the fact is that the borough president appoints, the borough president can appoint and remove. The board cannot appoint, but the board can remove one of its own members. So I just want to be clear that I can understand him trying to appeal to Donovan, but that should not change our direction and what we're doing.
Item number 4, declaring CB7 members.
Yes. So, yeah, top page. I think the top page is right then and there what's important. The date of this top page is 2 days ago. And I think this is the crux of what I'm saying as far as, here's a gentleman that has no morals, no contrition, no conscience. He continues. And this came out the other day, as many candidates did as they lost. Supposedly a gracious letter, thank you for everybody's support, we're going to work together, I'll be there for you, all that kind of stuff. But he had to. Our corrupt community board 7. And he continues to libel and slander us, both in writing and verbally. And I'm going to have Joe Sweeney speak to that in a minute, as one of my witnesses of what took place at one of the hearings. But he actually he made a comment and was challenged and was asked, well, who on board 7 is corrupt? I don't have names. And I think that testimony is here. And yes, on the last page, I think it's the last page, is a written testimony, which is the transcript of his testimony for the whole hearing.
So,
1 second, Joe. Yeah, I'm looking for something, and then I'm gonna definitely review it.
Mr. Chair, the point of information, this last page that is talking about, which talks about the borough president and charter statement, I have directed one of our staff to go and listen to YouTubes and reproduce exactly what was said. That was the transcript that you see here in front of you. This was taken from the YouTube, and that's exactly what was said.
I'm sorry, I had this highlighted in yellow, but my black and white printer was printed, so I couldn't find it. This is what I wanted to say. It's like 4 lines from the bottom. Sharon Lee said, the other 48 members on the community board, because excluding Chuck Apelian and John Cho, do you extend your accusation being that they're corrupt? There's only one who's publicly admitted, meaning myself, and I didn't admit to being corrupt. I admitted to being a consultant, and I was a consultant, worked on a project for 6 years, made it clear every step of the way. That's not corrupt. But the fact of the matter is that's what he tried to make it be. But when she said, anybody else, and he answered, I don't know about the rest, but the first statement was that the board is corrupt. So here he does, he throws the net out there, and he makes a disparaging comment. It's like a law trial, someone says something bad about you, and the judge says, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, disregard that last statement. You think they forget it? You think they didn't hear it? You think they don't remember it? That lawyer knew what he was doing. So John did that. He smeared the board, and if not for the fact that the borough president engaged in some conversation, it might have been lying. But guess what? Even out of context, someone will say, the board's corrupt. He said it. I see it right here. That's not what's the case at this board. We're on the board a long time. And that's one thing, well, there's 2 things that this board has always been upstanding about, was non-discrimination and non-corrupt. We've never had a situation where this board has been discriminatory, nor was there been any corruption. And to make that kind of accusation and tarnish the good reputation of 48 other people is despicable.
Chuck, can I just, because I was there.
Sure, Joe, go ahead.
Okay, so as you guys know, I've been on the board 35 years. In reference to this particular situation, since I think 2004, I think Councilwoman Julie Harris, she was a councilwoman at that particular time. She had put a plan for Flushing. I've been involved in Flushing West. I've been involved in had meetings over the years, meetings after meetings after meetings over many years. And being committee meetings, it was open to board members. I also went so far as to invite the public that happened to be there, that usually don't invite them to speak. I opened it up to as many people as possible. I diligently worked on this years and years and years. The night that we had the full meeting with the full board,
On Flushing West.
on Flushing West, as you know, there's a lot of people there, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I distinctly, at the end of the meeting, went up to John Cho and said, thank you for expressing your opinion. And that meant, not animosity, nothing. Express your opinion, you have the right. Okay, fine. So what had happened was, that was the end of that. Well, in February, the president had a hearing. I actually, on my cell phone, I take this comment. I presented, he presented. There must have been about 120 people there. And I had presented to our president, and then John Cho, he had his opportunity to present. I can tell you the feeling I had at that particular time sitting there. When he made this comment, he said, in there, he said, the only difference today, developers obtain certain community board members to be, quote, unquote, consultants of this project.
this situation is with the conflicts of interest. But he said, now this is what got me. I mean, the whole room went black. This community board members, not a member, members, even the board, right, they all looked, shocked, you know, what's going on. So, of course, what happened was, the borough president said, at the beginning of your testimony, we were around all intimidation, all that being made up by the applicants. And it shows says, and there's a point of saying it, yes, at least one community refuses of the local business in court, etc. But then he goes on to say, the borough president says, the other 48 members of the group extend your accusations to the other 48. He says, there's only one of them that's publicly admitted it. I don't know about the rest. Okay. So that's what he said at that time. So, what meeting was that? That was at the
Borough President's public hearing for the land use.
Yeah.
February 2020, land use hearing on special Flushing Waterfront.
So, you know, I was a guest. I said, I'm shocked. This is false information. There's no proof. He even admitted it. He was contradicting himself. Board members, and then turned around and he said, well, no, I don't know, but he made that accusation. Okay. So on March 28th, I got a call from a former board member, Peter Lane. And he said to me, because he knew I was working on this project, Peter Lane, I don't remember him. So he called me up and he said, oh, he said, what are you going to buy a new car? I said, what are you talking about? He says, well, you know, that whole thing down has been written. I said, yeah, that whole Flushing West End, what are you talking about? And I passed it off. My brother, who died on his duty in the police department, my brother called me, now has since died. He calls me, oh, you're really making the money? What are you talking about? He says, why don't you read the New York Post? So, it says here, and I'll give it to you in a second, locals limit over development in the Flushing Creek, Queens. So he says in here in the video, it's a quote from him.
In the New York Post.
New York Post.
Thank you.
This has seemed read from the beginning to the end, said Flushing Chamber of Commerce, John Cho, 6.7. And so I'm going to give you, I was just, you know, livid. Here he says it's written. I mean, false, totally false. He already told the borough president, I don't know what you know, there's nobody else, I don't know anyone else. False information. And as Mr. Lay had said here before, the community board were quasi-governmental employees. What we say stands up. And the way that I also felt when I was at that board meeting with the borough president, when she heard that, I said to myself, wait a second, even though he said it and he accused himself, I'm not sure, based upon that she think, uh-oh, there's some kind of corruption. Maybe I should really vote yes or no for this. But in other words, he implied it. This is not what a community board member's responsibility is to do. We are officials, private officials, and they listen to us. Okay, so then I did see another article I don't have. However, on June 1st,
Of what year?
this year, now I'll give you this in a minute. He is indicating, he's in an article in Police Legal, I'll give it to you. He says here that what I was pointing to was the corrupt nature of what is going on with developers pouring millions of dollars, including paying community board members, and asking the borough president to take that the developers taking everything with a grain of salt, show set. This is totally false information. So this appeared, it's on the last page of the deal with the Daily Eagle. I was shocked. Okay. So then, of course, I believe you have this in this packet. This is as of now June 12th. This is the all-out show to end CB7 corruption.
I'll get to that.
Yeah.
Part of mine.
Okay, I know. So, I saw this, and again, you know, what he did is, so what I'm saying to myself, after him repeatedly doing and saying things like this, what is the sense of the public to come to the community board and he's put the perception there that we're corrupt? Well, why should I go to that community board? He's presented this whole corruption thing. So the public there is like, oh yeah, that's that corrupt community board. Totally false. In the community board handbook for the city of New York, the responsibility of the community board members to present information that's truthful. This says he did not present it, it's false information, and it's really having an effect on the community board. It's certainly had an effect on me. A person that's been on this board for 35 years, a committee, and I'm upfront, I do everything right, but for one community board member to consistently, and I would like lastly to say this. This is from Chuck. As an appointed member of Community Board 7 Queens, I can attest, this is a text, I can attest that this type of intimidation by Community Board's leadership is unfortunately the norm and how important businesses often conduct. It's not a surprise that so many of my fellow CB7 members are speaking at our public meeting. Again, more false information. This is not the responsibility of a community board member. And I wish you would take this into consideration tonight. Thank you.
Frank, part of our package that the committee has is there's a screenshot recently, and it was from this year, and he accused me of being caught of taking consulting fees. As I was caught. CB7's land use chair was caught taking consulting fees, as if someone found out. The other way they found out is because I proclaimed it right from the very beginning as required as a consultant and as conflict of interest board. But the fact that he writes caught makes it seem like I was doing it underhandedly, I was doing it illegally, and would continue to do so if it wasn't for the fact that I got caught.
Where is that?
It's in your package. It's,
Okay.
I think it's the second page down. That package there.
This one. Third page.
Third page, yeah, the top page was that. I came off on mine, right? Third page down. It's highlighted in yellow. So again, a libelous statement completely distorting the truth, when in fact, even the borough president said, I think he did it all the right way, didn't he? And his answer was, yes, but it shouldn't be that way. So he didn't like it. And then 2 more pages down, again, another libelous statement. Once he got reappointed, and I'll come back to that reappointment for a minute, this is my 3rd term, and I'm worried that many of my concerns I've raised about Community Board 7, including corruption and lack of accountability. Here we go again. And then this was the page that Joe Sweeney was showing you, the heavy black page, which is a dark copy on the black and white printer. But a rally in front of the board office on June 12th. Just before, right, early voting started, 10 days before the election, the day early voting starts, a rally to end CB7 corruption. Doesn't quit. And by the way, he knew at this point charges were against him. He knew removal charges. That letter was sent in May. He didn't quit. He used it as a fuel, as an incentive. And then he sent this out. One of the letters, Lena Hughes sent it to us from him also, back in June 25th, right after the primary ended. We were in the process of tabulation, but he accused politically motivated smears from Community Board 7's leadership. By the way, I live in the district. And guess what? This is what came out. Paid for by Common Sense New York. We didn't do anything. There were other people that knew what a bad guy he was. This is the kind of literature, and this is just a couple of them, that was sent out. And to turn around and blame Community Board 7, to blame Community Board 7 leadership, is despicable. When this went to every person's mailbox. And it shows exactly some of the things he did, and it shows who paid for it. So I take great upset that he turned around, that he would take that comment right after the primary and made it seem like we undermined and we were going after his primary. And I think on that note, we rest.
Board members, committee members, do you have any questions, comments on item number 4, the things you remember the board as a whole?
Mr. Chair, as a point of information, again, to all public servants, we were sworn in as public servants. And if anybody knows there was corruption that is going on, they were supposed to notify the appropriate agency, which is the DOI. And we can check with them. And I'm sure there has not been one complaint made by John Chubb for the Department of Investigation. Otherwise, we would have been investigated. Yet he continues to yell about corruption in Board 7, and his responsibility then was to notify the correct agency to resolve that problem.
Good point, John.
Is there anything in, I don't know if this argument, but is there anything in the city charter or bylaws or otherwise that prevents a board member from making false and libelous and slanderous comments against this board?
General law prevents that.
Okay.
You just can't go around and slander and libel people.
A point of information again, as I remember correctly, Mr. Chubb was the chief of staff for the city of New York Controller's office, as well as the councilperson's office, John Liu. And he knows well in advance of what is responsible of a person, what isn't. He's not just Joe Q. Public money. He is a member of the city government, 2 governments, and then comes on us as the 3rd government and knows the rules and regulations. So in most cases, I would say Joe Q. Public may not know the rules and regulations, but I find it very hard that Mr. Chubb, or Board Member Chubb, doesn't know what the proper protocol is.
If you want,
Because he did when he, for all the requests from me right away when he became a board member. He managed to get voice and letter requesting information that he thought I was going to give to him when he filed requesting wireless and stuff.
and the point is that had he picked on Chuck Apelian, the individual, that might have been a different story. But he always picked on Chuck as a community board member and at times his position and the board as a whole.
Without any evidence at all. And myself, you could say, well, yeah, he is a consultant, and you try to make a very thin, thread to tie it together. But what about everybody else? Oh, they're all corrupt. Oh, I don't know.
So,
Point of So, in reference to what you statement there, is there anything you want that basically said? Basically, what you're doing by spreading this wrong information about corruption, as far as we know, what you're doing is you're taking the trust of the people. It's our fiduciary responsibility to, represent the people. But if you're giving the perception to the public that you are corrupt, the public loses faith and the board loses faith. So therefore, it did say the law, but what he's doing is he's taking a city agency or whatever, under the city charter, and he's distorting what the city, the it's been done. It's wrong perception to the community, and therefore maybe the community may not come to see us, maybe this, maybe the corrupt, our effectiveness dies, and that's totally wrong.
I agree with you. Listen, our board, most of us here are definitely here, well, maybe not you guys, but over 10 years, over 20 years, over 30 years. And when it's 12 o'clock on a Monday, 12 a.m. on a Monday night, and we're wondering what the heck we're still doing there. We got to work tomorrow morning. We do this because we're energized by the intelligence, respect, and order that this board is run by. And I got to commend Gene, although he's loud sometimes, but we keep order to our board. And we respect each other's opinions and votes, and we abide by the bylaws and so forth and so on. So, yes, I agree with you that personally and as a board member, that to defame the board and to defame individuals on the board is a detriment not only to our board, but all community boards and the city itself. Hey, we know we don't get paid for this, so there needs to be some incentive. The incentive is that we want to do some good, and on the hours and hours we spend doing this. So to defame and tarnish the board itself, de-incentivize the members for wanting to do that good, and that is a punch in the stomach of the board that I think is very, very unfair. But my committee members, I asked if you had any comments. Do we want to accept this item number 4 as fact after everything's been presented? Larry?
I mean, based on a general law, yeah, if this qualifies as liable center, I can't argue against general law.
That's it.
I would need more information on general law. My grandfather with that is, and I agree with what he did and what he said was expensive. I find it expensive, especially all the time that I put into the board. But can you really, and I would need a lawyer, granted it's not an attorney, but can you commit libel or slander against the city agency? So in other words, if I turn around and I say the mayor's office is corrupt, okay, it's a city agency. You can't really libel them, you can't slander them. If the same thing, CB7 is a city agency. If somebody turns around and says, well, not only is CB7 corrupt, but Warren Schreiber is corrupt. Now, Warren Schreiber, myself, I would have a case. I could go hire an attorney. I could see if I could bring a cause for libel or for slander. So I would just like some clarification on that. And again, as I said, I'm not an attorney.
My question to you was, based on what was presented here, do we accept item number 4 defamation as fact, based upon what was submitted? So we have 1, 2, yeses, Robert, yes,
Yes, I accept the facts that were submitted.
and I do
And
too.
the thing is, he personally knows all of us, and he's got the same world from us.
Yeah.
Someone might know the mayor's office, who knows who's in the mayor's office? He
But that-
knows all of us, and he's calling all of us to us, and including Chuck. You know, he didn't name his name, but everyone on the board. I'm insulted at the same number for us too. You know, including me and that.
I've sat on the boards of many nonprofits where there's fiduciary responsibility, and I've served well in the local area for 30 years, and I don't need to have this
Exactly.
anywhere near me is defamation. I have in certain times I've had relationships with people presented at the board. You put up your hands and you say it out in front, and you say it. And that is why we're on the board, because we are integral of the neighborhood, and our paths may cross and should cross at times. We had Douglas Joan Boat, she was on the board for many years, and she was a whirlwind of historical information. Anyway, we've accepted it as an honor. There There is an item number 5, and I'd like to pass on.
I'd like to present it, you can pass it if you'd like, but I'm gonna present it.
Go right ahead.
Okay. There is a YouTube video which some of you may have seen, some may have not. I don't have service, so I can't play it for you right now. But I'll email the link to everybody so that you can watch and see it in context. Joe Sweeney will also testify to what was said that day because he was there at the hearing. But Joe himself, as much as calling the kettle black, he is corrupt. At the Queensborough President Land Use hearing,
That date?
I want to say February 20th, but I'm not sure. It was February 2020. It might have been February 20th.
Okay.
He boldly admitted that his vote could be bought. Now, I'm going to give you the exact verbiage of what he said, and then we'll have some discussion about.
It's on the top of the phone.
Yeah.
It's February 20th, it's the committee hearing.
Oh, there it is. I get it. February 20th. That's right. So it's on the last page of this submittal I gave to you. There is a written testimony. It's on the last packet I gave out. I didn't distinguish it. So it is February 20, 2020. John Cho starts by saying, "I'm speaking against this project." That's fine. "Although for the right price, I might be persuaded to change my mind." To the gasp of many people in the audience to hear a public official make that comment in that language. He didn't say if things would change. He didn't say, I wish they would make things different. For the right price. In the same breath that he's talking about dollars and cents and about the board members being corrupt, he himself is saying, for the right price, I can change my mind. I will email you the YouTube link. I'm sorry we can't play it for you right now. I'd like to turn it over to Joe Sweeney, who was sitting at that meeting also.
No, I can only address the fact
I
that
understand. I'm
you
understanding.
got up and you stated it. It's on the YouTube, and you made that statement. I mean, I had it on my cell phone. I did take that week, but it's on the information that you go on YouTube to see. It's there.
Mr. Chair, I'm sorry to interrupt this point of information. On the paper that Chuck gave you on this one, in kind of page 2, which was the letter that I wrote to the Department of Investigation, it has the link right on there, and it tells you the time into the actual thing.
Okay,
So
great.
it's 2 hours, 14 minutes, 18 seconds. Tells you exactly for your
There's also a transcript on the last page of this.
Yeah, but I'm just saying it's pulled out of the context later. I don't want somebody to think that the context was not appropriate. So that's why we gave you the exact time and the link to go on.
I'll email the link. It's a long link, but I'll email it to you. But there's your spot on it, so everybody can take a look at it if you haven't seen it already. But it was quite shocking to hear that kind of language come out from a public official. And again, at the same time that he's pointing fingers with his left hand, he's sticking his hand out with the right hand.
So I have a question. I don't have it in front of me, but I was under the impression that there was more to that statement, that he made that statement that he, for the right price, he could change his vote or whatever he said. But then didn't he follow that up by saying that it would be affordable housing?
Yeah, so,
What
so,
did he say?
Warren, the quote in the transcript, the acting borough president Sharon made a response by, you made a bold statement at the beginning of the testimony that there's right price on the change of mind. What would that price be? I would say 500 units of affordable housing in public park and DOTIS.
But that's engaged in conversation out of context 5 minutes later. He started his testimony and continued his testimony by making the bold statement and not saying what she asked him. If she doesn't ask him anything further like before, his statement stands on its own merit. For the right price, I could change my mind. And it's baffling why Board 7 and all these people is that the developers are paying certain community board members to be consultants on the project. That's his next statement. With his left hand, he's taking. With his right hand, he's accusing us. So is he deflecting? Is he making it seem like everybody else is bad so he can take for himself and nobody would notice? Is he that pristine that 49 members of the board are corrupt, but he is not? What kind of message is he sending? Remember, chief of policy for the controller, chief of staff for the council member. This is not a young man that is just flaring out. This is someone very calculated in his methods, very calculated in what he was trying to convey. And he's done it in a despicable manner to the general public at the expense of our reputations.
So, I mean, at the same time that you just raised that, taken out of context, it could be construed as that he was corrupt. This is the reason why I personally would not accept or submit this fact. This quote could be taken out of context either way. And in fact, if you recall, on the night of the 19th of June, when we had this meeting, he had people speak on his behalf who made the statement, you have taken this quote out of context. He was actually doing this in jest, which is subject to interpretation. So I think taken out of context, and even in context, especially in context, I don't really think that this makes the grade in terms of it being, quote unquote, a statement of outright quid pro quo corruption. Like, I will get paid $5,000 and then I will change my mind.
So
But he's also accusing the people at the same time.
I can't hear him,
I
sorry.
said he's also, well, he said that in jest. He didn't say it in jest about accusing the board to be corrupt.
Again, there's 5 charges. Maybe this one doesn't stand up on its own if it's the only charge that goes through.
I make a recommendation we abstain from this charge for reasonable context.
So Frank, what I'd like to just remind everybody, and I'd like to close, and I think the committee then should have some time to deliberate and discuss. Remember, at this point, you're not voting on each particular charge to say, I need 5-0 on unanimous approval to go ahead with each charge. I don't have to have every 5 charge to do it. You're voting on cause. And the law department will be at our hearing. Our next step is to have a hearing, a special meeting of the community board, which will be, only item on the agenda will be consideration of removal. We've spoken to the law department.
Which the chair will decide that date when.
Yes, you'll decide between yourselves.
And my question to the chair is just to confirm, we are going to give a yay or nay on proceeding without a lot of detail.
You're gonna give
You're
a
gonna give a report.
report, from what I understand, of the allegations of each case.
Am I going to enumerate each one?
Yes,
I will, excuse me, I will enumerate each one.
right.
But our vote will be, one vote for all.
Correct. The vote won't be bifurcated.
Right.
You could say what we found on each one.
Our recommendation is that the board consider a vote, consider a motion.
To remove.
To remove John.
Yes, that's, in other words, that's the final vote, yes, is for the removal pending your approval on the charges that,
Consider a motion.
whatever the charges were, whatever ones you accept, whatever ones you don't accept.
Well, it's going to be this. It's going to be removal for cause. And here's the explanation of what we heard. Chuck I will present again at the board.
That's right, that's why I'm saying it this way.
And Joe may show up,
We're going to make.
and he has right to present.
We may make the motion, consider a motion to the board, consider a motion for removal for cause based on facts submitted.
Right.
But understand this, the full board will be able to ask questions, and where I only give you points of information, I have a lot of concerns that I have, but that will only come out in the conflict when you give your report.
Before you guys came into this meeting, everyone here, I explained to them, yes, I explained to them that this, and stop me if I'm wrong, that this would be very much like a land use.
Right, correct.
This is a committee.
Yes.
If the lawyers were here, they would
That's
present. When we go to full board, if the lawyers are there, they will present in the book and open for discussion.
And those lawyers will have to write.
Essentially, at that point, the committee is really, moved at that point, except for when you ask for our.
That's correct, that's correct.
Okay.
But John will have the right to be there with his lawyer, whatever he wants to bring, whatever.
And that's a great way of putting it. It's just like a committee hearing, and it's going to be a presentation, discussion, questions.
We came a little early to
Okay,
discuss
no, that's fine.
how we were going to do this.
Discussion.
You know what, I think that this went very, very well, very, very.
I just want to remind, it's cause. You're voting for cause. And these are the items that would be something you'll consider for cause, but at the end of the day, the way the charter is written and the way our bylaws are written is removal for cause.
We have voted unanimously on each point to accept flowers for as fact. We have the opportunity to debate that. And
What I was going to recommend to the chair is that my opinion, and only my opinion, is I think that you should go into executive session with just your committee members only.
Right
That's
now.
what should be, yes, because you want to hash things out, that's what the committee should do, and you shouldn't have anybody.
Yeah, that's my job.
Yes,
that's.
Okay, but I just feel that,
We discussed
I
that.
don't want anybody to feel intimidated or
And
anything
just to
like that.
let you know, if there were 200 people, 100 people here in the room was a little chaotic and unable to really go through this, we would have done it.
No, but I'm saying, now that you
Yes,
guys
we
are
are.
out, you should go into executive session, so we should all get out of here, and, you
Right.
will come back to me to tell me if and when you want to move, if you need a second meeting, or if and when you want to have a full, special meeting.
And Frank, wait, I want to say, and Frank, with all due respect, the evidence presented here tonight, in a normal situation, whenever you get a committee report, et cetera, it's read, et cetera. I believe because this involves a board member, and, he has right to defend himself, I believe that a packet should be given out to each board member with evidence that was presented here tonight.
Joe, that'll be done verbally. Let's go through that.
No, but I'm just,
Joe,
I know that, but
Joe,
I'm sorry,
The chair and I will discuss.
Yes.
Yes.
okay,
And especially that we accepted certain items as fact, and we will have the fact.
if you need clarification from the board, we'll just go tomorrow, let's get the clarification. That gentleman there, Chuck, Frank, you have to deal with from Papa Newsom, because when you're ready to leave, he needs to know, so we can close on.
Okay.
I think it's.
procedurally, make a motion and vote to go into executive session.
I was just gonna ask someone that the motion to make executive session.
I make a motion to go into executive session.
All in favor?
And later, promise, there's no internet down here, it's the second floor, has a better website on it. If you need to know, I can give you the.
I got it.
Okay, but it's tough down here, I was trying to get on myself, and that's why she put us on the second floor, it's easier upstairs, the website.
Thank you for attending, guys.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Josh,
Members of the committee, good
if
night.
you'd like to stay,
Thank you,
you're
Larry.
welcome. If you'd like to stay, you're welcome.
Yeah.
If you'd like to stay in executive session, you're welcome. I wouldn't mind an independent item.
Are you guys gonna report your decision when you're done?
I will give it to the chairman. If the
Okay.
chairman wishes to release it to you, go right ahead.
Okay, got it. And is that gonna, if he's going home, is that gonna be like verbal, or is that,
Excuse me?
if he's going home, is that gonna be verbal, or are you gonna give that to him
I'll give
later?
him a written.
Okay, got it, okay, thank you.
Barbara, are you recording audio?
Yeah, I'll put this on YouTube, you guys are good.
Yeah, you can send us the link. Did you?
Yeah, Gene gave me his card, I'll send it to him. Yeah.
This is, by the way, Katie.
Josh. Okay. Thank you very
Hey.
much, everybody. Have a good
Thank you. Nice to meet you guys.
Thank you.
have a good one.
Yeah, you too.
Good luck at Queen's College.
Yeah, thank you. You as well.
Okay.